So for the next few weeks, actually between now and uh, Easter Sunday, or the Sunday before Easter Sunday, Palm Sunday, thank you. Jen and I are going to be doing a little series called The Image of Holy. We are having I don't want to say an interruption because that's not right, but a special guest teacher on the 30th in 2 Sundays. Lawrence is going to bring a neat lesson that will be, he said, reflective of what we're doing on Wednesday nights right now, what he's doing on Wednesday nights right now, which is an exploration of holy and making us talk about it and think about it and challenging us to wrestle with it, which has been fantastic. So we'll be doing that on the 30th, and then Jen and I will pick back up on this idea of the image of holy. And he's doing that for us because Twyla and I are going to be out of town. Next week, JJ's preaching, much appreciated. And then the week after that, it's going to be a duet at table with Justin and Jen. So thanks for that. So y'all are in for a treat for the next couple of weeks. And then you get me again. So the image of holy. Oh, thank you. I really wasn't fishing for a compliment, but I'll take it. Fishers of men, yes, not fishers of compliments, but yeah, fishers of men. The idea that Jen and I were wrestling with this. All right, what do we want to do to fill in, to take us through Easter? Because after Easter, we get a real treat in Scott, right? Do I have my timing right? That would be the first Sunday in May, right? Okay. Penciled in. No, it's in Rock. Right. So we'll have a guest there, but he's going to be talking about Job, aka Job. So that'll be fascinating. So we've got some good things lined up. But what Jen and I wanted to do was take this idea of Jesus as the Son of God, the presence of God, Emmanuel, God in the flesh, that if God is holy, he's going to be the beautiful, perfect image of holy, right? So we're looking at holy in his life. Now, everything in his life, he was holy, so everything is fair game, which makes it interesting because you will see the different perspectives of Danny and Jen. And though we have known each other now for, how long has she been here? It's been, well, no, Coraline's almost 16, right? So it's been coming up on 17 years. Yeah. Yeah. Y'all look very similar. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Something like, I think that's right. So it's been a long time. But as we have watched her grow, and as much as time as we spend together, and I bounce ideas off each other and all that kind of stuff, when we started talking about this and said, well, I want to do this, well, I want to do this, it was like, wow, that's so different than what I thought. So I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's almost like I take the happy stuff and she brings out the weird stuff. Okay, so get ready for that. Now, what I want to do to begin, I'm wrestling with how to approach today. Because one of the things I want to do is have some time to get your input on what you see as where you see holy in Jesus' life. You know, maybe it's some of his teachings, maybe it's some of his interactions that really strike you as that's a holy moment. That's a truly holy moment. God is really painting us a picture of holy there. because I'm planning on maybe in the summer, I'm not sure exactly when, kind of doing a series very similar to this. This idea of learning about holy through the life of Jesus, because he is God in the flesh. He is God among us. He is ego eimi. He is the great I am. So I want to have time for that. So I think what I'll do is explore one of the Bible episodes in Jesus' life that I find very holy and that really struck me, and it has struck me as different. And this Jesus is somebody special for really for decades. One of the first stories that impacted me from the life of Jesus, specifically. Always loved Jesus, always thought Jesus was Lord, that kind of thing. But this particular story really grabbed me early on in my teenage years. So why don't let me do that, and then I'm going to try and save 15, 20 minutes for us to have some input here. And I'm going to be talking about, there's actually several stories that impacted me early on. This one goes way, way back for me to, again, my high school years when I started going to church on my own. I was 16. Maybe I was 17. It was my junior year. So, turned 17 in February. So I can't remember exactly what time of the year it was, but I was late 16, early 17. I was very early in any kind of real curiosity about Jesus, about Christianity. Again, grew up in a house where we believed in God, believed in Jesus, loved the idea of Christmas, that God would give us the ultimate gift, understood Easter, but never really engaged in the story, engaged in the life. Hadn't made a commitment. Does that make sense? Okay. I was relatively unchurched. So started going to church on my own after some kids in choir. I know I've shared this story before. For many of you, it will be brand new all over again because we're all forgetful, which is actually great. But I was a choir boy, loved choir. It was awesome. A lot of pretty girls there. That was great too. But periodically, if we had something coming up, whether it was the pop show in the fall or the musical in the spring, I think this was right before the pop show. This, I was 16. Okay. We would go during homeroom and go make announcements to different homerooms. Hey, pop show's coming up. We'd love to see you guys. Blah, blah, whatever. And so I was assigned, those four of us that were walking around, and we were done for that morning, and we were walking back, I guess, to the choir room. And we're walking and talking, in one of those kind of, band is probably the same way. Baseball, I know, was like that. Football, you see that all the time. There's a camaraderie that builds, and you just enjoy hanging out with each other, and you have this insider language and all that good stuff. So we're walking down the hall, just having fun, blah blah blah, and two of the girls start talking to each other, which is nothing unusual. And so I keep walking, and all of a sudden I notice that my conversation is not being reciprocated, and the girls are no longer standing, walking with me. I turn around and look. I said, "What? So what's going on?" I said, "Well, we were just, and they catch up to me, and we start walking again. They're very nervous. We were just wondering, would you, we're having this, it's and just him hawing, and finally they say, we've got this concert at church. It's a Christian group, and we were wondering if you want to come." And I said, "Well, sure." And then all of a sudden I noticed I was walking alone again. And I turned around, and their jaws are on the floor, and they're looking at me. I said, "What?" He said, "Well, you've never been to church with us before." And I said, "Well, you've never asked me before." And I didn't mean it snarkily. That was just the truth. And so anyway, so they were very happy. We went to this concert. It was early in the days of contemporary Christian music. It was cool then. I'm sure if I listened to it now, I would think, "Oh, that is the hokiest stuff I've ever heard." They had the electronic drums. Y'all remember that? Do, 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 do. Man, they used them the whole time. Oh, thanks. I'm teasing. I'm teasing. I'm friends with them on Facebook, as a matter of fact. Lisa Guilford and Anita Kent. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They did. They sure were part of the planting the seeds and all that good stuff for sure. Um, so I I share that to say that this church that we went to, it was First Baptist Pasadena. It was known as the Finger in the Sky Church because at the top of their steeple they had a finger in the sky pointing up. Yeah, so it was the Finger in the Sky Church. And I started going to Bible class. I mean, I just thought that was good. And I went to Bible class and I went to church about 3 weeks and quit going to church, but kept going to Bible class because the Jesus that I was learning about in Bible class and the Jesus that was being screamed at me in worship service did not match. Bible class, I'm learning about this guy that's talking about love and is powerful and yet compassionate. And then in church, it was, you're going to hell, you worm, unless you come down front to the altar today. I mean, like, seriously, 3 weeks in a row. And I just thought, I like this one better. I'm sticking with it. And I started going to Wednesday night church too, because Wednesday night was awesome. The youth group thing was awesome. But in class, we would meet. It was a pretty big church. There were 100, 150 high schoolers. And the youth minister would do a couple of songs, did about 10, 15 minutes of worship, and then he'd do about 10 minutes of an introduction. And we were going through the Gospel of Mark. And we all had these little booklets, these little group study guides is what they've turned into. And we split up into groups of 8 to 10, and there was an adult couple, and we would go through this little study guide together. It was awesome. I mean, just to study about Jesus and to see him do his thing, and that he was the Son of God, the one that came to save us. And we're reminded of that every week. And I just thought, this is really cool. And this story in Mark chapter 5 really struck me. And over the years, it's been one of those that I've really hung on to and just grown to love more and more and more. So what happens in Mark chapter 5, the bumper sticker, is Jesus heals a bleeding woman and a dead daughter. And it's fascinating. It's in 3 of the 4 Gospels. It's in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And I didn't know this then. The more I study this, the more fascinating this story becomes, especially coming out of Mark. Because Mark is normally, anytime Mark shares a story with any of the other Gospels, his version is shorter, usually by half or more. Mark is just punch you in the face. Jesus is powerful. He's very clear. He's very concise, moves from one episode to the next and just conquers everything and loves everything and just does it. And it's fascinating. Mark is the longest version of this episode of the 3 Gospels. Usually Matthew's kind of the wordiest, usually, because he's got all this Jewish influence and brings a lot of the tradition and a lot of the Jewishness out. Not here. So Mark says, and I'm going to concentrate on, I say I'm going to concentrate. It's very hard to split these out. But the bleeding woman is the one that really struck me. For some reason, it's so strange. For some reason, him raising somebody from the dead didn't strike me as terribly unusual. But healing a woman that's been bleeding for 12 years, that struck me as wild. And it's because the youth minister and the couple that was leading the study did a really nice job of illustrating and teaching us the difference between our culture and somebody that's been sick for 12 years and the culture then, somebody that's been bleeding for 12 years and being unclean and being outcast, kind of thing. And the other thing that really struck me was that this beautiful healing happens when he's actually on his way to something else. Mark uses what we call the Markins. I say we, as if I'm one of these scholars that came up with this term. Scholars say Mark uses sandwiches, Markin sandwiches. He will often interrupt where he starts with something else, and that something else is the case in point of what surrounds it. It's this real neat little technique, and he does that with Jesus' teachings and with things that are going on, actual events. So, one of the rulers of the synagogue, a man named Jairus, whose name, by the way, means Yahweh enlightens. Isn't that neat? Yeah. Jairus falls at Jesus' feet and implores him, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." What a statement of faith. And especially knowing how the story's going to end up when the rulers of the synagogue and the teachers and the Pharisees, they're going to be the ones that want Jesus to die. For this one to come out and beg, that just the desperation that must have been there to say, I don't care what anybody else thinks of me. My daughter is about to die. I'm going to go see this one they call a healer. And that's, you could actually talk about holy fear there, right? What are we most afraid of? What the Pharisees and the teachers of the law are going to say, or losing my daughter? Jesus goes with him, and a great crowd follows him and thronged about him. I said that this is one of those stories that's been important to me over the years. When I was teaching as a youth minister, when I was teaching the youth group, this story came up, and I was doing, and the commentary that I had some very interesting things to say that I hadn't seen in my early understandings and readings of this and the early teachings that I received about it. There was a great crowd thronged about him. The Greek is very emphatic about the crowd pushing in around him. I get this picture in my mind, and this is one of the things I love about Hebrew, Greek, yes, but especially about Hebrew, the languages. It's a very picturesque language. Now, this is obviously written in Greek, but it's also taking that tradition of the Hebrew picturesqueness and taking this business language, Greek, and making it more picturesque. And so what I mean is, the Bible invites us to engage our imagination and relive these moments, repicture these moments, produce a movie in your head and make it come to life. And the picture that comes to mind when I first heard about this throng idea, this pressing in idea, was I saw a heavyweight fight. I'm 98% sure it was Muhammad Ali, but coming out of his dressing room, and the crowd just, and he had bodyguards around, and they are walking beside him and walking in front of him and walking behind him and keeping people away. And I mean, you could see that circle of safety, let's call it, collapsing and expanding as the crowd is coming in. I mean, it was this, and it wasn't violent. They were just admiring of him, right? They just wanted to touch him. They just wanted to see him. They just want to get close to him. So they're pushing to get closer and closer. And I see that now when I read this story. And here this healer is in town, and this fascination is at its boiling point here in Mark, and they're just pressing in and trying to get to him as he's on his way to keep a little girl from dying. And there was a woman, no name. Another thing that I didn't pick up for years. Jairus. Jairus has a meaningful name, whom God enlightens. The woman did not. She was a no name. This is all very purposefully done so that we get that idea of how far she had fallen, so to speak. She didn't even have a name. She'd had a discharge of blood for 12 years and had suffered much under many physicians, spending all that she had. Some of these, again, the details that are here in Mark are just fascinating, and not in, some are in one, but not in the other, that kind of thing. But Mark has the fullest treatment. She had spent all that she had and was no better, but rather grew worse. So this idea of, again, desperation that Jairus had, she shares it. Jairus has it for his daughter. She has it for herself. She has given everything she has and hasn't gotten any better, and it's only getting worse. She'd heard reports about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd, in the thronging crowd. So here's a woman who's been sick for 12 years. She has to be weak from that sickness, from that constant discharge of blood. She's unclean. She knows the tradition. She knows she's unclean. She knows she's outcast. And yet she's pushing her way through the crowd, and she's still not identified. Still nobody sees her and says, unclean, get her out of here. Because they don't even see her. And she's fighting her way through. She has to fight her way through the crowd. I go back to that picture in my mind about the crowd surrounding Muhammad Ali. I don't know how anybody could have worked their way in through that group of people to get close if that's not where they started. You know what I'm saying? There's nobody getting from the outside in. But this woman fought her way through the crowd and thought to herself. Now, scripture says, for she said. She didn't scream that out loud. She said it to herself. But in good Jewish tradition, words are action. Words are not empty. Empty words are vile and spewable. But she believed, if I touch even his garment, I will be made well. Jairus made a statement of faith. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be well. This woman believed a statement of faith. Even if I touch his garments, I will be made well. Immediately, again, purposeful words are recorded. Immediately, the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body she was healed of her disease. Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turns around. Who touched my garments? And just in case we forgot, the disciples remind us, you see the crowd pressing in around you, and yet you say, who touched me? In other words, a bunch of people. We're having a tough time keeping them off of you. Yeah, who didn't touch you? Which would be much more Jewish, right? Yeah, who didn't touch you? Again, I have an Italian Jewish background, I guess. Who didn't touch you? Yeah. But notice, I actually misquoted Jesus. Who touched my garments? The disciples respond, and then Jesus looks around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. This would be a great, maybe I should have saved this one for a sermon on fear. Came in fear and trembling and fell down before him, told him the whole truth. You know, I always say we have to know our place. This woman knew her place. And to me, this is an incredibly healthy picture of the first level of how we approach our Lord, that he is that great and that powerful, and we are that undeserving. And he said to her, and I think this is the one that got me, daughter. Jairus' name means Yahweh, to whom Yahweh enlightens. Her name is daughter. That's the Jesus I fell in love with. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace. And as we know, peace in Scripture is wholeness, completeness. Your faith has made you well. Go in shalom and be healed of your disease. Of course, we know the rest of the story where he goes and heals the daughter. And I always loved that story too. It was one of the first stories that Christopher really, really loved. He loved that Jesus raised this daughter from the dead. And the words that were used there when Jesus said, Talitha cum, which means little girl, I say to you, arise. And there was one youth Devo that we did. It was, I believe it was a senior high Devo. And I was doing just the portion of Jairus. And I could just see Christopher just wiggling with excitement. And I said, do you want to tell a story? And he told the story of Jesus healing the little girl. And it was beautiful coming out of the mouth of a child. I mean, he was probably kindergarten, maybe at that time, maybe pre-K. But to hear him tell the story and to watch the high school kids just mesmerized that this kid knew this story and loved this story. It's kind of like hearing, I'm going to Bible class. I want to go to Bible class. It was kind of like that. Scripture says, immediately the girl got up and began walking, for she was 12 years of age. How long had daughter been bleeding? For 12 years. Mark's given us a little hint that these two tie together, that these two explain each other, that these two witness to the amazing holy God that we love. God sees us for who we are, yes, but for also who he can be and who he chooses for us to be. And while all of society saw this woman as unclean and potentially contagious and dangerous, Jesus stopped what he was doing, healed her, and called her daughter. That's who Jesus, that's holy love. Consequently, that's what we are called to do, is to look at others in holy love and see how much God loves them, wants to call them son and daughter. It's our job to bring God's holy love to bear that might take place. Okay? So that's the image of holy. So what are some other either passages or episodes, interactions with Jesus that remind you or that might fit that bill? Sorry, I like blue. I'm sorry? Oh, raising Lazarus. Still on. Yep, still there. Okay. All right, Gary.
Come on out. Come on out of the boat.
Ah, Peter walking on water. Okay, nice. You may see that or hear this story in a sermon coming near to you.
Okay.
Danny, the woman at the well.
The original at sign meaning
Danny?
Lazarus. I mean, Zacchaeus. Sorry.
oh yeah,
Saw
Zacchaeus.
Lazarus just as I was getting ready to say it.
And that's happening more and more, doesn't it? You know, getting fun's kind of old because you always have an excuse. You know, you mess up and you just go, I'm getting old. And everybody goes, oh, okay.
Getting fun.
It's awesome. It's almost like being a freshman in high school. I remember walking in 10 minutes late to class one time. Well, I didn't do it. A friend of mine did it. Here I am reappropriating others' stories. And the teacher, yeah, I was in advanced math, so I was in there with a bunch of sophomores, right? But this one kid comes in and she goes, "You're 10 minutes late." And he goes, "I'm a freshman." And no kidding, the teacher goes, "Okay."
Danny? Danny?
Is there anybody on Zoom that's, yeah, Carolyn.
Yeah. Healing of the deaf mute boy.
Oh, hang on. We don't have the volume up. Okay, now.
When Jesus healed the deaf mute boy.
Huh?
When Jesus healed the deaf mute boy.
I'm sorry, that was not nice.
I know you're old.
Thank you, Carolyn, for putting up with me mostly. But that was a great answer too. Others? Let's see what I've got here. Now, I had the luxury of thinking about this all week, right? So let me see here. Woman at the well, woman healed of bleeding, which I did. Zacchaeus. I love that story. We have a great video to go along with that too, don't we? Yeah, 70 times 7. Parable of the ungrateful servant. We also have a great video for this. We do. Well, say that when Jen's here. But yeah, we do. Prodigal son. When Jesus prays. Not my will, but yours be done. Okay, thinking like Jen, you brood of vipers. I so want to tell you what she's going to do next week, but I want her to I want it to be a surprise too. I know it's just so hard. It's just so hard. Cleansing the temple. Uh-huh. Oh. When Jesus was 12 years old and he was talking to the elders and teaching them things at the temple. And thank you for that reminder. Oh, good one. Okay, down to the knees. Somebody may have to help me up. Loaves and fishes. Oh, that's a great adventure. Ah. Oh, absolutely. That's the big message there, isn't it? That really is a holy moment right there where the children recognize his beauty and his wonder and his goodness and are not afraid of him, but are drawn to him. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yes, I've got baptism by John. This is one of the ones that I've been thinking about for years. I said, why even had to do it? But when you think of it in context of holy, it starts to make a lot of sense. So those are some of the ones that I was just kind of imagining and thinking about. And I would challenge you to this week continue to think about that and read your favorite gospel, or read your favorite Jesus episode interaction, and look at it through the lens of Jesus being the image of holy and what that tells us about our call to be holy. Yes, ma'am. Oh, how could I forget that one? Jesus washing feet. Again, how in the world was that not the first one we put up there? Thank you. Ooh, Jesus teaching us to pray. Nice. Okay, this is the last song I'm going to put up there because my knees are. Yeah, take off your thinking caps. Oh, that's a good one. Y'all did really good. Okay. So do that this week. Think about this some more and text me or shoot me an email, and let's make this list even bigger. And I'll preach out of some of these and we'll explore these together and just see the face of holy in the image of Jesus. So I think that'll. I mean, what better way to learn about holiness, right? And God in the flesh. All right. There we go. We've got 12 minutes to fellowship, and then we never start on time. So really probably 14 or 15. Thanks, y'all.